Is this you? Help, I don't know what to read. Choosing a fantasy book is so hard, even though I've already watched the first Noobs guide and got lots of recommendations. Sci-fi sounds stupid. How can it be science if it's fiction? I just can't get into books that are set in space. After I read Harry Potter, I was like, I don't know any more fantasies. So you want to read more fantasy and you don't know where to start. Welcome to the Noobs Guide to Fantasy in Sci-Fi 201. Congratulations on your graduation from Fantasy Noobs 101. It's been a while. Maybe you finished those books. You're lost in a new fantasy forest of confusion. Dragons aren't even real. Is this one about Jon Snow? Ow! Is it? Today I will tie a rope around your hand and pull you along behind me as I guide you through a whole bunch of new fantasy options and something maybe you haven't delved into before, sci-fi. Science fiction, which means fictional science, which basically means fantasy, okay? It's fictional science that we haven't seen yet. So right now it's fantasy. When people tell me that sci-fi isn't fantasy, Harry Potter's fantasy, I'm sorry. Can you prove to me magic doesn't exist? I didn't think so. I didn't think so, So as far as you know, this is all fantasy. To your science brain, maybe it sounds more plausible that you're gonna jump 42 light years away to a planet 3 universes from here and make friends with the aliens. To me, that's just as plausible as a secret society of wizards living in our world, okay? If one can happen, the other can happen. They're both fantasy. Now, before we start, I just want to reiterate, just in case you forgot, the golden rule of fantasy novels are give it a second. So maybe you don't like the first 10 pages. You keep going. Maybe you don't like the first 50 pages. You keep going till you get past page 150. If you still don't like it, you might be able to stop. I'm still gonna say maybe give it 200 pages because you're in a new land. The same goes for sci-fi. If you're on a different planet, you're in a new land. If you're in space, you're in a new land. Have you been to space? Unless you're an astronaut, no. Give it a second. Let your brain adapt to a new world before you go judging the crap out of it. Thank you. We appreciate it. We appreciate that. I'm gonna start off with the shorter series and standalones. We're gonna ease you in. The first book I have here today is the least sci-fi fantasy thing I can give you. Honestly, it's contemporary pretending to be sci-fi. It feels like a standalone, but there is gonna be a sequel, and that is an absolutely remarkable thing by Hank Green. This book is so easy to read, but aliens are involved, so it's sci-fi. If you're a contemporary person and you have trouble giving yourself that second to adapt to a world, this is the sci-fi for you. This is an especially good pick for someone who's involved in internet culture in some sort of way. We delve into a lot of internet culture related themes, fame related themes, and it paints a very raw picture of the world we live in from the perspective of someone who's suddenly in the spotlight. Another one to help ease the transition from contemporary or classic slover to sci-fi fantasy enthusiast. Brightly Burning by Alexa Dawn. This is so easy to get into. It is Jane Eyre, one of your favorites. I know you classics people love Jane Eyre. You know who never read Jane Eyre? Me. You know who got really excited about Jane Eyre after this book? Me. So it works in reverse. It brought me to you. It can bring you to sci-fi fantasy. Brightly Burning takes place in a future where Earth is all messed up and we're not living there. We're all on a bunch of ships in space orbiting around and we've got limited resources. Stella Ainsley, she's in her late teens. She's looking for a teaching job because she doesn't want to be a mechanic, and she gets a job on a private ship for Mr. Rochester. There she teaches a young girl and it's super fun. I love the romance. The Martian by Andy Weir. This is a sci-fi book. It takes place on Mars, and it's amazing. Maybe you've seen the movie and you think you've seen all the Martian you need. That's where you're wrong, my friend. There is so much more in the book that you missed. This could be your gateway into the sci-fi world. I know it was my gateway into being more open to things that take place in space. You know, I saw the title The Martian and I thought, alien. My brain is like, aliens, fear. My aversion to space has something to do with aliens. I was scarred by E.T. as a child. Actually, The Martian is a man living on Mars. This is my go-to recommendation for anyone on the street who finds out what I do and then is like, oh, you have any book recommendations? The Martian. Oh, isn't that a movie? Yeah, read the book. When people on the street ask you for a recommendation, usually they don't really mean it. They're just saying it to be nice. But when you say something recognizable like The Martian, it's a win-win for both of you. You're gonna remember it. There's a 1% chance they see the book and they'll pick it up. A lot of books can classify as sci-fi and be so grounded already in what we know that it doesn't even take a second to get into it. They're more accessible, but a lot of people are more afraid of sci-fi than fantasy. Why? I don't know. Maybe aliens like me. Getting into the duologies now. Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. If you haven't read this yet, you've probably heard of it. A sequel is coming this year. It's called Wayward Son. This book is your Draco Malfoy, Harry Potter, romantical fantasies come to life in the best possible way. If you're a huge fan of Harry Potter, if you've read all the books a gajillion times and are reading them on a loop via audiobook every night like I am, it's hard to go into Carry On and not just compare it to Harry Potter in every possible way. Like, oh, she's referencing this. Oh, this. Rainbow Rowell describes it as her take on a chosen one story. Like, it is its own story, but it's so similar to Harry Potter that if you're obsessed with Harry Potter, you can't stop thinking about Harry Potter. And I had so much fun with it, and I enjoyed the characters, but I wasn't obsessed with it on the level that some people are, because my brain is so ingrained in Harry Potter that in a way, my brain was looking at this as fan fiction. And it's weird. I enjoyed it, but I can't love it the same way that I've loved all of Rainbow's other books. She's created her own version of a magical school, and a Dumbledore figure, a Hermione figure, and spells are so different and everything's different. I can't separate it, but I can appreciate it immensely. If you're not on the Harry Potter obsessed side and you're not looking for a 7-book commitment, this is 1 book right now, and there will be 2 books. You can do this. And the focus in this book is much more hate to love romance than Voldemort is coming to kill Harry Potter. I mean, there is a Voldemort is coming to kill Harry Potter strong storyline running through it, but we're all there for Snow Baz, Simon Snow, and Baz. WARCROSS. This is a sci-fi novel. It takes place in a world that's very much like our world, except everyone's obsessed with this virtual reality game, WARCROSS. And this girl in her late teens, Amika Chen, gets hired by the creator, the very wealthy, world-renowned creator of WARCROSS, as a hacker, and we go from there. I love the romance in this book. I loved WARCROSS in this book. Marie Lu is excellent at writing action. It's a duology. I haven't finished duology yet, but WARCROSS was excellent. I can't wait to read Wildcard. Let's talk about Leigh Bardugo. Most of you have probably already picked her up. She's amazing. She writes fantasy. But if you're new here and you've never heard of Leigh Bardugo, maybe you're confused. Maybe you're intimidated. There's the trilogy and the duology and that new one, King of Scars. What is it? I'm gonna break it down for you right now, okay? Slowly but surely, Leigh has been building an amazing, fantastical universe that is now en route to Netflix. The trilogy came first. It's called the Grisha trilogy. Maybe you've heard people talk about the Grisha-verse. Now, these are unfortunately titled, and I can never remember what they're called or the order that they go in, but I really enjoy the Russian-inspired look of their covers, and I really enjoyed the story. Grisha are people with abilities. Some countries respect that to no end, but in some countries, Grisha are enslaved or killed. Our lead character finds herself with this very rare Grisha talent. She's taken in by the king, who's pretty evil and wants to use her, and it's her journey getting out of the grasp of the king. I blew through the audiobooks. They're short for fantasy novels. They're so doable. course, but you don't have to read this before you read these. Yes, it's recommended, but no, it's not necessary. How do I know? Because I didn't do it. I did it backwards, and I'm fine. And I have a great appreciation for the world that Leigh created, especially because I went into this not knowing anything about what Grisha were, what Ravka was. Piece by piece, my brain put it together, because that's what fantasy lets you do. Use your brain. Puzzle stuff together, theorize. These are amazing. Do you have to give these books a second? You do, and you will not be sorry. It's a group of criminals that are coming together to perform a heist. You can't go wrong. It's the Ocean's 11 of fantasy, and the audiobooks here are amazing. If you have trouble with fantasy and you can't sit through it with your eyes, pop it up on the Audible app on your phone while you're driving or you're doing dishes. Also, I'm an Audible affiliate. If you use my link in the description below, you get your first book for free. When you finish this trilogy and the duology, you're like, whoa, damn, she did a good job. She built that world. She did that. You do have to read the trilogy and the duology before you read King of Scars. King of Scars is the new one. King of Scars just came out. You can't read that one first, no. Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This is a sci-fi. It's so easy to read. It is a fantastic audiobook. It is so funny. This is the first book in a series, but the good thing about it is this is the only book out thus far. It's almost like a standalone, except it's not, but it could stand alone. All the characters are so much fun. It's one of those books where you go through schooling and then you graduate at the end. I love those. I love having classes and getting to know our characters through a schooling experience. So she's in school to be a pilot on a different planet where humans now inhabit in the future, where presumably we vacated Earth. You looking to pilot a spacecraft into battle with a clever plot and mysteries? Riordan. Now, I know we've talked extensively about Percy Jackson and how amazing Percy Jackson is. If you finished Percy Jackson, Magnus, Chase, and the Gods of Asgard. Now, you don't have to have read Percy Jackson to read these. These books are based in Norse mythology, which is fascinating and so different from Greek and Roman mythology. This is a trilogy. These are not Percy Jackson and the Olympians middle grade-y. It's more like Percy Jackson and the Heroes of Olympus. It's like a step older. I'm taking a few liberties with this next one, but I couldn't not include it. I'm going to say it's sci-fi, but really it's kind of a utopian. Scythe by Neil Shusterman. This is a trilogy that you have to read. This isn't the newest version that has the gold prize on it, but this won a Prince Award. I have a book talk explaining in depth and more fresh from the book exactly why it's excellent. It's so thought-provoking. You might have to give it a second, but I didn't have to give it a second. You can listen to the audiobooks. They are so good. Whenever I think about this series, it continues to blow my mind how good it is. It takes place in some point in the future of humanity where we've gotten rid of death. Science has advanced so far that we can cure anything. There's no disease anymore. So they have to hire people as scythes to keep the population under control. And if you're the scythe, you have to decide who to kill. You have a quota every year and you have to kill that many people. And that's that. We follow our two lead characters who get chosen as a scythe's apprentice. You have to be a scythe's apprentice and then graduate that apprenticeship to become a full-blown scythe. We've last talked of fantasy noobs. I've read 2 of the 3 in the MISTBORN trilogy, which is fantastic. It's very intimidating. So this is definitely for y'all 201ers. If you haven't picked up MISTBORN yet, it's not hard to read. It's just a commitment to reading it. I hear these audiobooks are good. I read this with my eyes and I read Well of Ascension with my eyes. They are both so well written, so everything. The magic system is so cool. Our lead character is so cool. And there's a romance running through it and everything's epic. There are such high stakes. You're gonna love this. There's a crew. There's some sort of heist happening. Our lead character is the thief of sorts. It takes place in a world that feels kind of medievally. If you haven't tried a Brandon Sanderson book and you like fantasy, you have to. You've heard of this other author. I talked about her first series in my first Fantasy Noobs video. Today, I'm going to show you her next series. It's called A Court of Thorn and Roses. There are 3 books. It's a trilogy. And the middle one's called A Court of Mist and Fury. Sarah writes epic fantasies that have a lot of romance and steamy relationships laced through them. It's not solely romance. It's not romance. It's an epic fantasy. But like, relationships are a big part of it. And I love that. These are real good, yo. Heart of Thorns by Brie Barton. This is a new fantasy series that's pitched as Game of Thrones meets Throne of Glass meets Handmaid's Tale. I've said that so many times. This is the most amazing pitch line, and it's so true. It took me no time at all to fall into it. I gave it maybe half a second, and I was there. I was in it. It takes place in a world where there are kings and there are women with abilities called Gurak. They can manipulate your bodily functions by touching you. In this kingdom, they've been painted as demons. All women have to wear gloves at all times. As a precaution, her lead character, who has been brought up to hate these women, to hunt these women, her powers manifest and she realizes shit, she's actually a Gurak as well. She ends up on the run. It's so good. This is the start of a trilogy. The way Brie Barton writes is so eloquent and clever. The Gilded Wolves. This is for all you Ravenclaws out there that love a good puzzle, that love a good period piece, that will also love the super cool magic system and crew of clever characters on a treasure hunt in the Gilded Wolves. This book is like Dan Brown meets, I want to say, Mistborn. Roshni describes it as national treasure with more attractive characters. It takes place in Paris in the 1890s. I don't think it's a good first-time fantasy book. Like, if you've never read fantasy before, this is more of a 201. If you're ready for it, do it. Chronicles. I don't know how I've never talked about these in a noob video. I guess it's because it's never fit into a noob video category. This is a quadrilogy, a quartet. There are 4 books, and I didn't want to take them all off my bookshelves. I'm sorry, I was lazy. The first is Cinder, and then there's Scarlet, and then there's Cress, and then there's Winter. It's a fantastic quartet. It is extremely satisfying. It's a sci-fi series that I finished in its entirety, and I absolutely adore. It's a sci-fi retellings of famous fairy tales. In this futuristic world, we have the technology. If you lose a limb or if body parts need to be replaced, we can do it with metal parts. It's fantabulous. It's called the Lunar Chronicles because people live on the moon at this point. The moon is basically its own country, and we don't have the best relationship with them. Every book is called a different character's name, but they're not separate. They're all a series. Like Cinder continues throughout all 4 books, so just keep adding people to the cast. ERAGON! I just read ERAGON. This is the beloved fantasy that I would say can be enjoyably read anywhere from ages 10 onward. It's a very Lord of the Rings-like fantasy, except more accessible. In Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This is definitely a 201 level fantasy. I wouldn't jump into it as your first fantasy ever, but it is super well done. The world that we see in it is based loosely off of ancient Rome. You definitely have to give it a second, but the characters are so endearing that you want to follow them. You want to see what's next. And the audiobooks, my god, it's so nice when you can audiobook a fantasy novel. The world is so subtly created. Sabaa does a really good job of showing us just a small sliver of it. So you're not overwhelmed in this first one. We concentrate on LEIGH. She's been enslaved and is working for the commandant at this military school where our other main character, Elias, is a student. We're very slowly drawn in and different details are dropped on the sidelines, but we're concentrating on these 2 people. In A Torch Against the Night, all of a sudden our world opens up. We start off with a little window, and then we had a clear glass wall, and then in Reaper, Sabaa blew the house down so we could just see everything. Amazing characters, amazing world, so different from any fantasy novels that I've read thus far. I hope I brought you some new recommendations. Go forth, devour the fantasy. My name's Christine. I make videos every Tuesday. Thanks for watching my first book, Again But Better, comes out this year, May 7th, 2019. It's available for pre-order now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye!